Hey, Paul.
Hey, Fab, how you doing?
Great, yourself?
Good.
Cool.
Standing up.
Today we have a fun topic. We might argue.
That's why I'm standing up. I'm ready.
Nice. So a controversial subject in the world of sales and marketing.
Paul and Fab.
Which what's that?
In the world of Paul and Fab.
Yeah, it's actually a broader discussion that we see going around LinkedIn all the time.
Yeah.
Which is around LinkedIn automation. Let's call it specifically for salespeople because they tend to use it the most. So basically, just so that we're on the same page, LinkedIn automation means you use a platform that then automates connecting with people and then sending them messages once they accept your connection request. Obviously, the counterbalance to that is like you connect with people manually, send them messages manually, and so on and so forth. So, like a lot of things, right? There's email automation. It's the same concept. It just makes things more scalable, easier. I have concerns about it. You're obviously representing maybe more the full-on sales side. So let's talk about it. What's your feeling about LinkedIn automation?
So you have reservations, and it's interesting because Fab and I were actually talking about this offline last week, and we were having a discussion, and we said, "Hey, let's bring this onto the podcast." Yeah. And basically, in Fab, I think what you were saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll let you sort of add to it. You were saying that you're not sure it actually works. You're not sure that it actually helps you connect, and you're not sure that it brings value. I think that was your point. Am I correct?
Yeah. In a nutshell, yeah.
Yeah. And what I was saying to Fab is that, I've used it myself. Now, I don't believe in full-blown spam automation. The way that I've used automation, full disclosure, and the way that I believe in automation is that I believe that if your first message is just asking to hook up on LinkedIn in a very honest way, just saying, I'd like to add you to my network, and that maybe your second automated message is very honest in what you do and why you're reaching out to them, I think that's good because then you're really opening the door, right? And what I do, and we've talked about this before, I use basically parts of my conversation starter. I say that I help enterprises or leaders such as yourself who are having doubts about revenue growth. And the people that answer me know exactly what I'm about. I'm not trying to be sly or not snide, but I'm not trying to be sly and try to hide what it is or my intentions. I do want to start a conversation. I tell them I want to know more. And you're not getting a huge connection rate, but I've never been asked, hey, don't write me anymore, or you're annoying me or whatnot. So that my point is, if you use it properly, and I know we're probably going to end up agreeing, if you use it properly and you're not sending, like I've had one person send me about 4 automated messages. I was like, come on, this is ridiculous. And I could tell they were automated. Hey, you're missing this, you're missing that. And that to me is that's spam. But if you're just sending me one message to connect and then one to invite me, and then I've had a few people say no, thank you. And I don't write to them again. But I know some people have like a trail of 4 or 5 automated messages, if the person doesn't answer. And there I will agree with you that is spam. Yeah. That is, I think, useless. And that's where LinkedIn's probably going to start shutting those things down because it's ridiculous. But I do think that for someone who wants to reach out and broaden their network, if they're honest in the way they do it, can have some good success. You seem to think there's just no good thing about automation. So let's hear you.
The only reason why I don't think there's any good value in automation is I think, but let's put an artificial number there, 99.9% of salespeople that use it don't use it. Like use it horrendously, but that example that you gave, the 4 messages, or you connect and the first thing you get is like this long message about why you should buy their stuff and all that. I think it's just not done thoughtfully. I think because it's still a gray zone, right? I don't think it doesn't technically abide by LinkedIn's policy rules, but they're not really cracking down as much as they could. So this is a gray zone. And I'm comparing that for salespeople and automated emails where there's like a lot of research, there's a lot of like what kind of emails you should write and blah, 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 blah. But I think ultimately the conversation always goes back to, even in emails, personalizing your messages just always works best. And automating at scale doesn't, like the drawback is personalization. And I don't mean personalization like hi Paul, but more personalized just in terms of like, hey, I read this article, it was really interesting, and people don't like doing it because it's a lot of work. It's easier to like set up your tool, business owners of X number of employees or X number of revenue in this area who have their profile in English, and then boom, let's say, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, you could get a bit more fancy. Maybe people that went to the same university as you can send them a little message. Like that's how we would see like some good benefit, like some really like deep diving a little deeper on the segmentation.
Where, philosophically speaking, you're talking about targeting, and some people are using it more as a mass, and that's what it is, right? So LinkedIn, you can do both things. You can be very targeted, and that's what you're talking about. Be targeted, understand, read what they're talking about, connect with them. You went to the same university, you have things in common, and that's true, and that's the targeted approach, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I'm saying is that if you use a more broad spectrum approach so they're basically two different strategies that you can use on LinkedIn, and I don't think one replaces the other. I think they can actually work together. But I agree with you that if you're doing the more broad one, if you're being spammy, then you're probably wrecking your chances of doing any targeting later. So there has to be an intelligent strategy there.
Yeah. So for example, there's somebody now that I'm in their campaign clearly, and they're trying to sell me I'm not going to go specifically what they're trying to sell me, but like, let's call it a consulting franchise. And, they just keep sending me messages at random moments, and they're all super long. And I mean, I know the brand, so I kind of know what it's about, but it's just like, but there's no content. This person's not sharing content. They're not adding value. They're not enticing me to even look for this. It's just like sharing some fake value up front just to be able to sell me, like, click on this link afterwards. And it's just like, and so like in the realm of sales, I can see how, if you're emailing or messaging, 100 people and even like 10 reply back, and, you have a decent closing rate, you're like, well, I can get 5 new clients from that. It's definitely worth it. But then when you're not thinking about it, is those 90 people, or the 90% that ignored you and, maybe flagged you, and to who you're adding absolutely no value, and you're actually not building a very robust network. So you're just building a network of people that just accept anybody, and you're building a network of some genuinely curious people. So I think
when you do automation, you have to select according to certain criteria. So I would beg to argue that when you're setting up your initial campaign, so for example, if you're trying to reach companies, CEOs of companies that have 200 employees, you can put that in your sales navigator search, and then really drill down to CEOs that have 200 employees, right? So you're not really just randomly choosing people. You're choosing according to something of a guideline of people that you feel you can help. So CEOs with 200 companies, with 200 employees in the manufacturing sector.
Yeah.
That's it's targeted, and you might have, I don't know, 100 or 200 people in that campaign. Well, that to me has value, because I agree with you. If you're just going out like boom, to anybody and you're sending out 4 messages, I see it. I do.
Yeah.
But I've actually had people in my campaign say, "Oh, I like your approach. You're not like the others. I feel it's more honest."
Yeah.
And I had a conversation. So, it was an automated campaign, Fab.
Of course. So. No, I think there's value, and I think there's value in trying different things out, being more honest, being hyper segmented, being honest and hyper segmented. Like, there's a lot of different things. I think my concern with it, and a lot of what I'm seeing going on, is that most people don't take that time. They just see it as a quick way to build a pipeline. Yeah. Okay, I don't have to make cold calls, and my emails aren't working. Boom, let's do LinkedIn. Like I am now God's gift to building pipeline, right? And I think I think there's some challenge in that
I know
because the
you now.
what's that? Sorry.
That I now know who's spamming you.
And so all I'm saying is that, it's just a lazy approach. And if you're just using it as a lazy approach, which I feel most people do, because they're not going to take the time to understand what makes sense, what's not makes sense, to exercise empathy, which is something we've talked about in some of the earlier episodes. Your metrics might look good in the short run because, if I message out 1,000 people, I'm going to get the 50 or the 20 that I need. But if you're thinking about it, if I'm sending out 1,000 messages and only 20 people reply back, that's pretty horrible. Like what happens next quarter, right? I'm going to have to bump that up to 2,000
And
and
you know what it goes
3,000.
down to, Fab? You just said it, empathy. I think as desperation goes up, your empathy goes down, right? So you say, "Oh my God, I need to do more sales." Okay, well, yeah, to hell with it. I'm just doing I just got to get out there,
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, listen, I agree with you. If you're going to use automation in an intelligent way, or if you're going to use LinkedIn in an intelligent way, let's face it, if you had all the money in the world and you could target every single message, it would be great. But there's a reality that you can't do that. So if you're going to use automation, use it intelligently to tread the water, to make it work to your advantage, but also to the person who's reading its advantage, right? Because if I'm reading, I just put myself in my clients or my potential prospects position. If I'm getting a LinkedIn connection from this guy, Paul LaFleur, who I don't know that well, but I see that he's a consultant sales. It's okay, I'll cook up to him. And then the next thing he says to me is, "Hey, I help business owners like you." And then I feel like, you know what? I'm all good. And I've had a lot of people just say, "Hey, I'm all good right now." And I said, "Great, thanks for answering. If ever you have any questions, don't hesitate." And that's my next message.
Yeah.
And people appreciate it, right? Now I might reach out to them again and offer them something else. Like I might offer them a free webinar or something. And then I'm sure some people will be interested, or I might offer them something else, but I'm not going to spam them to say, come join me, come.
Yeah. I think the challenge is beyond they come to my webinar. I think the challenge is more like, "Hey, let's book a meeting. Hey, I haven't heard back from you. Let's book a meeting."
Yeah.
Hey, I think the one I got was like, "Hey, because you're in my network, like I thought I would shit like like I don't even know who you are. Like I don't care about being in your network. I probably connected with you by mistake, or I'm doing a lot of passive studying on LinkedIn automation stuff to see where things are headed. So I do accept people that I know will send me automated messages.
Some of them I find are really witty and really well done, and they're hilarious. I don't want to buy the product, but I think some of them are funny.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think my concern with it is that most people out there will use it as a lazy tool to try to build pipeline, and within a couple of years that won't work. So they'll be on to the next thing, so on and so forth.
You know what, Fab? I hate to say this, and you might hate me for it, but it's no different than telemarketing was 50 years ago, right?
You're right.
When LinkedIn, so telemarketing 50 years ago, you were at home and someone called you and said, "Hey, are you redoing the windows on your house?" And 50 years ago, you were like, "Oh yeah, we're thinking about it." And like you'd get hooked in, you're like, "Oh, this guy's just a scammer." Now what happens to telemarketers, right? First of all, we don't have home phones anymore. But when the odd one does get through, you just hang up on them unless they have a really good sales pitch.
Right.
A really good conversation starter, which we've talked about in the past. So same thing on LinkedIn. This stuff's going to continue. And I think that's why LinkedIn is not shutting it down, because it's the new telephone, it's the new email, it's the new text messaging.
Yeah.
Whatever platform is out there, at one point, anyone who's trying to sell something in the world is going to try to use that platform to their advantage. Now it's the smart people who do well. Like when you do get the odd telemarketer who says, "Hey, I know it's telemarketing, I just want to take a couple of minutes of your time. We're helping homeowners in your area, get their windows, get their houses clean for the spring. Is this something that could interest you?" Actually, no, I'm okay. There's an approach. There's a telemarketer that calls you. I get it once a year. There's a telemarketer that calls me. I think the last one was for like the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, and I was like, "Hey, this person was good," and I listened to them. I didn't buy, but I listened to them, and but this person had a good approach.
Right.
I think the same thing with LinkedIn automation. 95% of people, you're right, it's going to be, and you're just going to
Yeah, I think what happens though is that the difference between a LinkedIn platform and a call is that a call ultimately is still in the privacy, between you and the person. Like there's only one, but LinkedIn ultimately is also a network, and there's value in building the network. And I think you're basically devaluating.
The message is private though, Fab.
The message is private, but the when you're talking about empathy before, the reason why somebody goes into LinkedIn is, and you could argue that the reason why somebody has a phone is not to get spam. But I think there's the value that LinkedIn offers is more around the content stuff that you can share, and I think there's much more value in exercising, in building great, I hate that expression, but great content on LinkedIn and so on and so forth. But
well, I think that's still there, and I agree with you. But this is where we become purists as human beings, right?
Yeah.
LinkedIn is two things. It's sharing content, and I totally agree with you. If you share good content, you get rewarded by getting more views. So that's brilliant. That's true democracy, right?
Yeah.
Or is it democracy? Anyways, I forget. Maybe I'm using the wrong term. But it's a democratic way. It's a natural way. It's reward based on reality, right? Now,
Yeah.
but LinkedIn is also a communication platform between individuals.
Right.
That's where I think you need to see LinkedIn like, well, part of it's the telephone and part of it's the internet.
Yeah.
So the part where you're reaching out to people and you're messaging them is the individual communication, and that will do as any platform will do when you're directly communicating with people, is you will get the individual that's trying to reach out to you to sell you something or help you with something or whatnot. And if you're good at it and the person needs it, well, then it'll work. And if you're not, well, then you'll get cut off or thrown into the spam bin. So,
right.
But I don't think and it's interesting what you're saying, because I agree with you. If like the few people that we know, and you're one of them, and you and I are trying to be some of them. We're trying to put good content out there that people find real value to. Well, that's great, and we get rewarded for it, right? The people that listen to our podcast, the people that follow us on LinkedIn. But however, if you or I decide to do an automated LinkedIn campaign and we're real boneheads about it, well, we will get rewarded properly by being shut down and people saying, "Hey, piss off, stop spamming," right?
Right.
So you have the option of doing both. You can do both well. You can do one well. You can do the other poorly, or you can do both of them correctly. But they need to reflect who you are too, right? That person that's sending you all those messages, you can shut them down with one click. You can say block, and then
I would normally. I think, like I said, I do do research, study, review what people are doing to see what's going on, like if the space is changing or not. And you're right. I think obviously, like there's always value. Like some salespeople send out some great emails. Like all the stats, all the pundits say like email is not good enough to just build your pipeline, but I've worked with some reps that send off great emails and they build like great pipeline just off of emails.
Yeah.
But obviously they're the minority of people. Most emails that are being sent off are lazy and don't work as well. And so then you just get into the volume game. Well, I need to send more and more and more emails just to get my smaller return. And that's the same thing there. And I think there is value. And for all the purist stuff that I said, I tried out the automation a long time ago in very early days of this. And, I got a few conversations. I wasn't even out on my own yet. I was just trying to get like side gigs at the time. Didn't really go anywhere. But, one person reached out to me like not long ago that I had reached out to. We had started a conversation, went nowhere. And now like we're in talks of having a more serious
so it worked.
So yeah, but not in the way that a salesperson would have. Like, right? They're not thinking 2 years later type of thing, right? But that's where
you had the long-term approach, the Chinese approach.
Yeah, I think
the long game.
The long game, and I think that's where the real value of it. Like, sure, there is value in trying to reach a broader audience faster in a way. Obviously, content is not an easy thing to do, right? It's a lot of people say that. It takes a while for a lot of people to start publishing great content that gains a lot of traction. LinkedIn's algorithm changes regularly, so videos work one day and text post the other. And so it's not easy. But I think if you're able to, if you are going to use automation, I think there's a few rules that work really well. Like honesty. I like how your approach is quite honest and open. I think empathy, like maybe.
And by the way,
16 messages is probably not a good idea.
Pause here. Fab's actually seen my message, and I read it to him, and so he's not just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, but I think above all, I would say a good content strategy to go with that would work great, because if you're connecting with somebody and they check out your profile, like it's automated, sure, but they're checking out your profile and you're saying, oh, you're sharing good content, and maybe there's a lot of engagement on your content, maybe not, but I like what he's doing, and he seems to be, or she seems to be very value oriented first, then I think that would work better. And it would also work super well for you for the people that connect but aren't ready to chat with you at the moment. So I think my golden rules were, it's good, but do it differently, right? Like empathy.
You know what this means, eh? It means that I won the argument because you.
No, it's not a matter of winning or not. It's like I still agree. I still believe in what I'm saying, that most 99% of the reps out there are not going to use it well, and they're not going to put it in the effort. They're just going to be using it as a quick fix to a sluggish pipeline.
Unless they listen to our podcast and start thinking about how they do it.
But yeah, if you're going to do it, I would segment as much as possible, be honest, be empathetic. So like I said, no 16 message drip, and combine that, I should say, with a great content strategy. And I think you'll be in a much better position.
I totally agree. On that note, it'd be interesting at one point to see, because you say that a good content strategy in the future, let's not fix the date till I talk to you offline, but it would be great. It would be great to talk about what you feel is a good LinkedIn content strategy, because I think that's something that brings, some people don't know, like some people are posting every day, little snippets. Some people post a huge blog post once a week. There's a variety of ways of doing it, and let's talk about that, because I'm doing stuff, but I'm not even sure that it's the right thing, right? So it'd be interesting to have that conversation.
Yeah, I think we have a good couple topics in the in the pipeline. Yeah. So we'll be tackling that shortly for sure.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Does this wrap it up?
This wraps it up.
We ended up agreeing, eh?
Yes and no. I would still not offer it. Like if I was consulting, obviously I'm not the sales consultant here, but if I was working with the sales team on an operational event, they're like, really need to build better pipeline at home, I think my first option would be like LinkedIn automation, just because left to their own, I think reps would butcher it. And
I don't think it should be the only option, but I definitely think, and I'll just throw this last thing out. One of the companies that I work with, full disclosure, does automation, but they also help you build really intelligent messages, and they also help you build content to go along with it. So they actually have a content strategy on your LinkedIn, so that when people come back, there's real value to what you're doing. So I agree with you. It can't just be automation on its own. It needs to be tied in with an overall LinkedIn strategy, which you need to do well. But it's also hit and miss. I mean, the reality of this world is that not everyone has a great product, not everyone has a great service, and not everyone has great marketing or great approach. So you might have a great approach, great marketing, not a great service, or you might have a great approach, great marketing, and not a great service. So all this comes to fruition in the end. So that's not the case for you and I. We have great products and services.
It's amazing. Thanks, Paul.
Ciao, Pat.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Ciao.